rebellious, and companions of thieves. Everyone loveth gifts, and followeth after rewards. They judge not the fatherless, neither doth the cause.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing the book of Isaiah, and we're in chapter 1. We've come to verse 24. In the past couple days, we read the opening, and we've seen how that God's people, the ox knows his master, the ox knows his owner, and the ass his master's crib, but Israel does not know. My people doth not consider. They don't understand where their blessings come from, essentially. Hold on a second. I gotta clear my sinuses. Okay, I apologize. So, they don't. The idea is that they keep doing things that are self-destructive that God dislikes. They don't know the master. Like the ox knows his master's crib. The ass knows his owner. Animals understand the relationship with their masters. They understand the relationship. They understand where they are fed. They understand where they are housed. And they understand who does it. And God says, I do all these things for my people, but they don't understand that I'm the one who does it. And they also don't understand what I want. I was giving, there's plenty of religious observance going on. There's plenty of religion. There's plenty of sacrifice. A multitude of sacrifices. But with this, God is not pleased. Because God has never been pleased with sacrifice. It was always, sacrifice was there. God can be pleased with sacrifice. It'll say like a sacrifice well pleasing to God. But the point is, an appropriate sacrifice acceptable is pleasing, but it must be remembered that God wants us to do right, not to do wrong and then give him something in exchange for it. Especially when you consider the fact that the old covenant is an old covenant that was waxing away. And that if God intended for Christ's sacrifice to substitute for all those things, then the truth is that none of those things really measure up to the need. Animal sacrifice, as it says in Hebrews, which we studied, that was the last thing we studied before I took a break, that it says it is impossible for the blood of goats and of rams to take away sins. As far as there's no, there is no, reason materially or a mechanism that the blood of goats somehow removes your guilt of having committed something. It doesn't do it. It's always been because God accepts it. Because God is willing to accept something in exchange. Though the exchange is not actually equal. Like the sins you commit are generally not worth the life of an animal. Or they're not, let's say, and they're certainly not paid for by the life of an animal. Or worth, I actually meant that the sacrifice wasn't great enough. But it does seem great, doesn't it? To kill a whole animal for that purpose. But even so, it doesn't really do anything. But it's like a lot of things. It does something, but it doesn't do, like making a sacrifice isn't so much about the actual sacrifice causing some sort of reaction to happen. But when I sacrifice, I do something that says something about me, and it sends a message, like that I'm willing to lay things down, that I'm willing to forego pleasure. It speaks to my desire and how passionately I want something. So if I sacrifice for something, it should be some sort of revelation of some kind of passion or drive or something of that nature that causes me to pursue that with such vigor. If it, if I do it right. All right. And then on top of that, so they make all these sacrifices, but when it comes to the law of God, when it comes to doing right, they are not doing well. They cease to judge the cause of the fatherless and the widow, which is a common Old Testament thing for, what it says is like the things you should be doing. And it's a bit cliche. It doesn't, it's not necessarily specifically what's needed, but it's an example of the kind of things that the powerful neglect, but that God genuinely cares about. The suffering of people. As far as that he generally cares about in this sense that he wants us to react to it in a way that makes sense, and that we should use what power we have to fix those things. Knowing that all our fellow men are made in the image of God, and we are under God and bear responsibility. Therefore saith the Lord of hosts, the mighty one of Israel, I will ease me of mine adversaries, and avenge me of mine enemies. And I will turn my hand upon thee, and purely purge away thy dross, and take away all thy tin. And I will restore thy judges as at the first, and thy counselors as at the beginning. Afterward thou shalt be called the city of righteousness, the faithful city. Zion shall be redeemed with judgment, and her converts with righteousness. And the destruction of the transgressors and of the sinners shall be together, and they that forsake the Lord shall be consumed. We'll actually start verse 28 in a moment. Let's just look at these 4 verses here, 24 through 27. And what God says here is through the prophet is, God's adversaries, he's not pleased with them. And he said, I'm going to ease me. I'm going to give myself a break. The adversaries make me angry, as we discussed in the anthropomorphic sense. And what does that mean when you say anthropomorphic sense, Paul? I feel like they didn't talk about this much, did I? Well, whatever, I did. Calling us, I didn't. It's funny because I look at it, this verse here, the calling of assemblies. Even the solemn meeting, new moons, appointed feasts. I feel like I didn't harp on church enough, but that's okay. Because that's how I feel like church is about that. It's about we do all these things, but somehow we're not doing the things that are most necessary. We're going through the motions. We're attending the service. And somehow righteousness is not coming forth. He says, the adversaries are troubling me. I'm going to give myself a break. I'm going to ease me of my adversaries. I'm going to avenge me of my enemies. I will have my vengeance. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. And we think of vengeance as, it's an interesting line. I've always said, not always, but I frequently say, maybe not in the study, but privately. I forgot what I was going to say, honestly. So terrible. My brain is just absolutely the worst. Well, it just, it'd be better if I planned ahead, huh? Avenge me? Oh, vengeance. Yeah, here's what I was going to say. Problem is I get distracted with the stupid filler words, like what I always say. I don't always say it, but I say it. Don't forget again, Paul. Yeah, it was, I'm starting to forget again. I have it on the tip of my brain what I was going to say about that. All right, vengeance. Anger. Wrath. These are things that we are supposed to control, right? We're called on Be angry and sin not. There's a clue. There's a little be angry and sin not. You know, the one problem I always have with that is that for some people, you know, and for me even, makes it a little grayer. It'd be easier. It'd be on some level. It'd be harder as a human to obey if there was absolutely no room for any emotion of like anger. My nose is just itching like crazy. All right, one more. Sorry. All right. But in the Bible we read also that God reserves wrath to himself. He reserves vengeance to himself. And I think the issue is, we look at it and we say, like, well, is it wrong? Revenge itself, meaning the idea that those who do evil should pay for the evil they've done. They should get what they have coming. That kind of sentiment is not wrong. The thing is, what we gotta be careful is, I'm a seeker of mercy. I come to God looking for mercy, empty-handed. I got nothing to offer him. I'm coming to him for mercy, because there's a measure of vengeance that is waiting for me if I never deal with my sins. If my sins go reconciled, undealt with. Sorry. If I don't do something about that, then the wrath of God falls on me. The vengeance of the Lord will come and punish me for those sins. And so as a Christian, I believe in Christ to escape the wrath of God, to not be part of that vengeance. Well, as a Christian also we are told not to take revenge. Vengeance belongs to God. And also we're told to put away wrath, malice, anger. We should put away anger. Now, it doesn't mean that there's no place for anger, because he says, it says give no place to wrath, but there is, the feeling certainly is sometimes appropriate. There are things for which it is appropriate, or at least reasonable, for someone to get angry. But even in that, if you think about it, anger is not a particularly useful emotion, especially if it's, if you can turn it to good. If you can take the thing that's making you angry, and then instead of becoming impatient or aggressive, violent, or whether that's physically or verbally violent, there is such a thing as verbal violence. I don't believe in speech being violence per se. I don't think they're equivalent. Like some people would say these days that speech is violence and blah, blah, blah. That's nonsense. But there is there is such a thing as, there are fighting words, and there are also things that are sort of destructive to people. Words that are actually destructive. Meaning, like, for example, and they don't get it. Like if I say, like stating facts that are, like crime statistics or something that sort of upsets people sometimes, because maybe some fact makes a particular group look bad in light of those facts or something like that. Like crime statistics may reflect badly on certain ethnic minorities, right? Although they may reflect badly on them, but we also know that it's what do I want to say here? It reflects badly on them, but it's not to say that saying that is violent toward, like mentioning something someone doesn't like or an uncomfortable fact is not of any necessity violence. If I would talk about verbal violence, it'd be like something where I'm in a discussion with someone and I start to use verbally dirty techniques, things that are meant to provoke anger, things that are meant to mostly get under people's skin. Insults, injury of verbal insults, verbal things like that. I had a book called the Gentle Art of Verbal Self-Defense, because there are ways in which people will use their words to attack you, and even the Word of God is likened to a sharp two-edged sword. So words are powerful. Speech can be hurtful and hateful and all that. I don't believe in hate speech per se and all that, though I get the point. I certainly don't believe in that any government should be involved in regulating anyone's speech, but the individual should be in the business of regulating their speech, because we want to speak words that are good words, the words that encourage people to salvation, that point them towards Jesus, not words that anger and make people resent and resent us and be angry with us. And so verbal violence, like if I take if I'm in a discussion with someone, I start, we're talking about a subject, and now because I'm losing the argument, maybe I start attacking them personally. Well, you always think like this because, you think you're so smart. You're just a pseudo-intellectual or something like that. You think, and then start getting into stuff that has all you're doing is making accusations. False accusations are a form of verbal violence. That's a good example. That's verbal violence. That's genuinely hurtful language. It's something that a false accusation, hurtful language. Sayings like, even someone saying, I don't like people of a particular skin color, that's not violence. That's just somebody, I don't like. That's an opinion. Someone's opinion, someone's taste, as distasteful as it may be, as immoral as it may be, it has no actual effect on us unless we're just going to be super sensitive little babies. So someone making just general disparaging remarks even about, but like, there is a point at which they are going, obviously, like I said, false accusations. That can genuinely hurt someone. That's verbal violence. A false accusation. So words can hurt. Because a false accusation can line someone up in jail. Can line someone else convicted of a crime they didn't commit. So, there is places where words become bad. Okay. Well, my anger also can do evil by the things I speak from it, by the judgments I make with it, because I'm ignorant. Vengeance belongs to God because God is not an ignoramus like me. And God sees all and knows all. I might look at someone's situation and judge them and say, well, they don't know what they're doing. They're a bad person because of this, that, and the other. And I can see, I observe, I see a certain fact pattern. And so I judge them. But I'm only looking at them in a very narrow band of their existence, and maybe I'm misinterpreting what I see. And so what's coming out of my mouth is actually just all wrong. And I'm getting angry perhaps at someone, and they haven't done anything wrong, but I'm just misperceiving everything. I'm the one who's got the problem. I'm the one who's lost in their wicked thoughts. And that's why, anger, the things that can be done out of anger and the things that can be done out of wrath, the inadvertent things, you can do so much harm. Wrath and anger can do so much harm. And that's why it's like, if we're not all knowing, it's extremely dangerous to give way to wrath and anger. You know what I mean? And so, well, the New Testament will admit that there is, be angry and sin not. And certainly, you can see Paul in his writings angry about certain people. For example, people who corrupt the gospel and stuff. I'm like, there's anger there. Or as my old teacher used to say, righteous indignation. Yeah, there is a room for righteous indignation. But here's the thing. What if you think you're righteously indignant, but the thing you think over, it's false? You have no right to be angry over it. It's not what you think. Then where's all the righteousness in your righteous indignation? There is none. Because it's all false. So there are certain sins that, we're too ignorant to take vengeance. We're too ignorant to that's how I look at it, because God does approve of vengeance. But he's going to do it right. And also, he's going to do it out of mercy. Meaning there will be room for mercy for those who turn to God, for those who have turned to God. It's given to men once to die, and after that, the judgment. I don't think after you die it's time to turn to God, but God's mercy is God's business, and I leave it to God. I've said to people, and a lot of Christians don't agree. I'm like, well, on the day of judgment, I said I had a guy. He was a native, not a native of the Pacific Islands, and his grandma and grandpa had been idolaters, and he was just totally shattered at the thought of them roasting in hell or whatever. For those who embrace that vision. I'm like, well, if there's such wonderful people, first of all, I wouldn't turn my back on Christ, because what if they were received of God, and you turn your back on Christ and you find yourself cast out? What's the point of that? I would trust God that He would, whatever I encounter when I come into His kingdom, it's not going to be unbearable to me. It's going to be rejoicing forevermore. Whatever eventually happens, however things line up, it's going to be rejoicing evermore, no matter what. And so I will. Whatever I'm not going to presume what that judgment looks like, because it's pointless until I see God's justice, until I see His mercy and how perfect it is and how right it is. Until I actually see it happen, I'm just imagining what it might be like. So I have all these imaginations in my heart of what I think God's judgment is going to be like. Oh, it's going to be so terrible. There's going to be so many innocent people just thrown in like a fire. Before you go down that road, just trust God and get there. I'm mostly concerned with my own judgment. I want to pass from judgment to life. I don't want to be held accountable for my sins. I want the Lord to say, "Well done, good and faithful servant," because I accepted the blood of Christ. I believe in Him, and not only that, I have, in my adult life, as I've been sincerely committed to the Lord, I have sincerely committed a lot of my time and effort to at least learning and serving and somehow, doing what I can with the talents God has given me, within my own limited capacity. And that's what we should all do. But vengeance is a step too far. We got to leave some of that big stuff. That's why I'm not a big fan of the death penalty either, because of the prevalence of innocent men being killed. I'm sorry, I'm not interested in innocent men being killed, not even one. I used to be pro-death penalty. I'm actually pro-death penalty as far as, I believe in it. I believe that we can sin so greatly in the world that men have the right to kill us. I do think that. But I also think that killing an innocent man is one of the worst things human beings do. And I don't want to support any kind of law that has any possibility of putting innocent men to death. I'm sorry. Not interested. I used to be, I understand. They say, death penalty for this or that, the other, and I'm not entirely in disagreement. It's just the justice system I'm not confident. I'm confident in the concept of justice and also in the severity of the punishment. I'm not put off by that at all. But it is, especially considering a guilty person. Of course, I'm absolutely for it. But the determining of guilt or innocence is the difficult part, and it seems like there's something broken about our legal system. The system has gotten too big. It starts chewing people up. I don't like that. What are we gonna do? We have to punish the wicked, and it's unfortunate, but sometimes the innocent get chewed up in those gears. It's really terrible. You think about now innocent people getting blamed for crimes. Think about in the old days, without the forensics and stuff. How easy it'd be to frame somebody up and all that kind of stuff. So he says, I'm gonna take vengeance. It's worth taking time to talk about. And I will turn my hand upon thee, and purely purge away thy dross, take away all thy tin. Remember, he says, thy silver has become dross, thy wine mixed with water. Thy princes are rebellious, and companions of thieves, every one loveth rewards. And by the way, the music from the beginning of this is also Isaiah 1, the music for this study. As you will find in many of the studies, as we do Isaiah, the intro music will be from Isaiah, almost exclusively. Because I have a lot of songs from Isaiah, especially the early chapters. So I will turn my hand to you, and not to, and he could say to destroy, but no, to purge away the dross, the impurities, to take away the tin. And this is part of, salvation in the gospel. We are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to good works. When he himself has sat down at the right hand of God, purged all our sins. God's hand is turned towards his people to work on them, to purge away the impurities, to remove the wicked men from among them. But as an individual in the Christian gospel, I want the wicked man that is me, I want that man to excel, and I want the other man to be purged. I want the dross that is my sinful nature, that is my foolishness, that is my wrath, that is all the things that God, that is about me that God is not pleased with, especially wrath that is, again, misdirected. That's the problem with human wrath. It could just go anywhere. I mean, humans will punch a wall if they're angry enough. And if you think about it, if you're willing to hurt something that has nothing to do, I want to hurt. That's why wrath is so dangerous, because it just ends up being... because we don't know everything, we can end up taking out wrath on the innocent, which is a terrible thing. I've reiterated that twice. I do find it highly, it makes me, I feel very strongly about it. So he's going to purge away the dross. He's going to purify us, just like in, like it says in the New Testament, that we would be purified by Christ, by the blood, and that our walk with him would be a process of sanctification, being sanctified, that we would be separated from those who would bring us down, and also from the elements within us that bring us down, that we could be separated from our sinful nature. It's an amazing thing that God is able actually to do that. I mean, not for God, but for us, it's amazing. I will restore thy judges as at the first, and the counselors as at the beginning. You'll be called afterwards the righteousness of faithful cities. How is the faithful city becoming a harlot? How'd that happen? Or wow, the faithful city is becoming a harlot. How shocking is that? That was more of the force. It's when it says, how is the faithful city becoming a harlot? That is exclamation point. Now, the King James adds that, but I do think that's right, because this is doubtless an interjection, not a question in Hebrew. And it's like, wow. That's the point. It's like, wow, is a faithful city. Now she's a whore. It's like you go to, you went to school and she was like the bookworm, and then you grow up and then you go to the class reunion and she's making a living as a stripper. You know what I mean? Or a whore, whatever. It's just where someone who's faithful, pure, suddenly defiled and, and seduced and destroyed. But again, what makes the city like that? The city becomes a whore because the princes are rebellious, companions of it's an interesting. I don't know. I in America, it's a little different. I do blame our leaders for being the way they are, but I do blame us for making these people our leaders. And not that we have great choices. Like I said, sometimes I feel bad. I'm like, I shouldn't have dropped out of college. I should have stayed with political science. I should have been responsible and gone into politics like everyone said I was supposed to. And that, it's something to be conscientious. But, you look at the most conscientious politics, it's tough. It's tough for people to maintain their integrity in the face of such, pressure for corruption. They're hanging around with thieves all the time. They're companions of thieves. Who do you think, the people who come to Washington to lobby the government, do not have your best interest in mind. They may have their a particular constituency's interest in mind. Maybe they're lobbying for farmers. Maybe they're lobbying for the metal industry. Maybe they're lobbying for the tech industry. Whatever. They're there. They're lobbying. What is the point of lobbying? Well, it's to get something from the government. If I don't send someone to the government to look after my interests, someone also sends someone to the government to look after theirs. And they'll get all the goodies, and I won't. So we got to get the goodies. So we got to send lobbyists to the government so we can get the government to vote for goodies for us, for our interest, for our constituency, for our district, whatever. Let's get the goodies from the government. And so they go around, they make deals. They're hanging around with each other. That was the thing. Is one of the things that came out of the big, American Rescue Plan and all the trillions of dollars they spent was the money going to who? Most of the money didn't go to people, average people. Some of it did. People got some for their, for their life. The payment is not insignificant. And but it's just, none of it's a good idea. Even if it helps us, in the long term, it's hurting us. And it's hurting the future, unfortunately. And that's what they're doing. They're stealing from the future. So they come to Washington. They're like, oh, yeah, we need this. We need that. We need the other. And here's some money for your campaign. There are people that are looting our country. They're taking money. People that are getting money from Washington, the taxpayer dollars, not providing any real. So, there's so many people working and getting paid from government and stuff who do absolutely freaking nothing. I mean, nothing you'd ever care about. It makes you it makes me angry. But I don't want to do anything about it lest I do the wrong thing. So I'm going to, lay aside my anger and just move along in peace, trusting God that He'll ultimately take care of these things. And that, there is a useful outlet for my anger. I mean, for me, my anger, I can channel it into my Bible studies. I can channel it into my music. I do that a lot. I channel those emotions, those passions into things that are productive. So instead of taking revenge, I can have my revenge through my music by just speaking the truth. And it's not revenge per se. Like, it's certainly not revenge that God would disapprove of. Like, for example, what good revenge is? Because there is such a thing. There is a good revenge that you can take anytime you like. Okay, this is for me personally. This is not what the scripture says, but I'm right. And because, and I'm allowed to do this because the Spirit of God is with me. But I'm just saying, it's not that controversial. There is acceptable. Have your revenge. Have your revenge. How do you get your revenge? Well, maybe they said you could never do it. Well, go do it. Maybe they said you will never amount to anything. Well, amount to something. Maybe they said, you'll never overcome this. You'll never overcome that. You'll never do this. You're incapable. Well, have your revenge by proving them wrong, and that's always an option. You know what I mean? When the naysayers put you down, you can, it's not real revenge. You know what I mean? But here's the thing: it can be just as gratifying without all the, the negative aspects. Meaning, have your revenge in a way that is productive, in a way that builds yourself up, as opposed to trying to tear other people down to get your own satisfaction. Get your satisfaction by raising yourself rather than by tearing other people down. I think that's good advice. Have your revenge by, living your life to the best ability you can. Let them talk and all that. Like the whole arguing with people. It's I do it sometimes when people get under my skin, and I'm not known for having particularly thick skin. Okay. So they're companions of thieves. They love gifts. This is all, pretty straightforward. They follow after rewards. They love bribes, gifts. They judge not the fatherless. The cause of the widow doesn't come to, to actually serve the needs of the people who need it the most. They're a dismal failure. That's true in our country. Like we had a war on poverty in the 60s, and it didn't affect poverty at all. Except to increase, out of wedlock births, because they incentivized out of wedlock births. Welfare did that, and then it ended up hurting the poorest people in the country and minorities, particularly blacks, hurting them overall. Now, you may look at an individual case and say, like, well, she was a teenage pregnancy and she was about to be out on the street or whatever, and she didn't, she wanted to keep her baby, and so we made all these payments, and, and that's good. And I'm not saying it isn't helping the fatherless, and etc. But the problem is, when you pay for something, you get more of it. If you pay for fatherlessness, you'll get more fatherlessness. And that's a catch-20. It's not an easy problem to deal with. It's not as simple as just, we'll eliminate the program. Now you got a bunch of people dependent on the program. You can't just get rid of it. But these are the things that happen when people aren't willing to really to really analyze a problem to see how you can actually do good, instead of doing gestures that don't actually do good. And something I do say all the time, which is love is what does good, not what feels good. A lot of times we do things that feel good because we want to feel good about ourselves and about our own moral superiority. So we do things that make us feel good about that, but not that actually do good for the subjects of our doing. Meaning we go out to do things to help people, presumably, the poor, the fatherless, the widow. Well, when we go out to do those things, we bear some kind of responsibility to take stock of the results and see if what we did actually did any good. And if it didn't do good, or if it did harm, then there ought to be a mechanism whereby we suffer consequences for that. That's the problem with intellectuals. And there's a good book by Thomas Sowell called Intellectuals and Society. I recommend every one of his books, actually. Because they're all great, and they're all just great reads, and they're just deep and interesting if you want to know about human society and economics, which are not the only subjects he writes on. But intellectuals produce a product for which they have no, they don't answer. Their product is ideas. They have ideas, and when their ideas don't work out, they're not forced to pay the price. And the example he uses, if an architect had bad ideas, and or an engineer had bad ideas, and they put together a bridge and it didn't work right, they would never work again. If you're an architect and you design a bridge and it collapses, you're not going to be working as an architect. I hope. Right? Right? I don't want to build a bridge built by, I'm thinking of the Discworld books. Bloody Stupid Johnson was the name of the engineer in that book, who was always building things wrong. You never get to meet him. But the idea is, it would never happen that someone who designs houses that collapse on themselves would keep building houses. No one would buy them. Everyone would be like, this person is incompetent. And that's what intellectuals are like in our society. They're incompetent. They have all kinds of big, bold ideas that don't work, and then they never have to suffer the consequences when their ideas don't work out. And they don't, and they should. I mean, there's so much corruption in the money and all that stuff between politicians and the lobbyists and the business interests and the military-industrial complex. That's a business. There's a difference between whatever. Let's skip that. I don't want to talk about the military. It's not here. So they're not really particularly attentive to the needs of the people and the things that they should be attentive to. This is a problem. This is God's complain against them. I just realized I went back. I thought it was a persuade. Well, whatever. You know, I thought that was the next verse. How'd that happen? Oh, whatever. I restore thy judges at the first, thy counselors at the beginning. I just got rolled back to verse 23. I thought that was verse 26. I realized that was a verse we dealt with last week. It's okay. It's a good point. I will restore thy judges as at the first, and thy counselors at the beginning. You know, I'm going to take the judges that are miserable. We just discussed counselors, judges, politicians, whatever. You know, counselors, whatever you like. People advising what to do. Intellectuals. Judges. Judges are supposed to judge the law. I mean, they're supposed to interpret the law and what it says and apply that to people. You know, they've got to take the law that's being enforced and say, is this being enforced properly? Is this, you know, what is the text here? Someone has to referee. And we need those referees, the judges, to be honest, knowledgeable, and, you know, they got to have integrity. But they don't always do that. Just like other people, they're human. You know, I believe in science, but I don't believe in scientists. And I believe in judgment, but I'm not so confident about judges. Though, you know, for the most part, I think in human judgment, to the degree that it's dependent on law. The judges shouldn't be making it up. And then they should be able to execute that. You know what I mean? Like, if I have the law spelled out for me, I should be able to do justice. You know? At least according to the law. Now, according to guilt or innocence, a lot of times that's determined by a jury, and that has nothing to do with the judge. I see the mouth is off a bit. Let's just, we're gonna just get rid of the camera for a second, because sometimes this works. I'm gonna reboot the camera, and then, yep, it's better. A little bit. There's always a slight delay. All right, so Zion shall be redeemed with judgment, her converts. Zion, of course, you know, I got to remember to mention this stuff. I'm always like, you know, I forget what it's like to be a new student. Zion, what's this Zion place? It's Jerusalem. It's another name for Jerusalem, but for a particular part of Jerusalem, Zion is the mountain on which the, you know, well, the sides of the north. Beautiful for situation is Mount Zion and the sides of the north. That's where the throne of God is portrayed as being. That's where the temple of God is portrayed as being. That's where Moriah being specifically the location, I believe. Because Jerusalem is built on a series of hills, small mountains and hills, that, you know, there's Zion, Moriah, and I've never been exactly sure of which is which, or if they don't refer to the same thing. But they do, you know, there's smaller and smaller divisions. The Valley of Gehinnom, you know, they all have names because it's a very long-term inhabited place. You know, the valley outside my property doesn't have a name. So Zion is just another name for Jerusalem for intents and purposes. It refers specifically to it as the seat of God's kingdom and his temple. Because Zion is usually associated with that, with the rulership of God and with the temple itself. And the idea, if we bring judgment to Zion, if we judge things right, if we bring the righteous judgment, the city can be redeemed. The city can be restored to its former glory, as at the first, as at the beginning. You know, in our country, we always go back. We always talk about, like, back to the founding. We got to go back to the Constitution, back to the original. You know, I was listening on the radio last night, and the guy was talking about, it was Mark Levin, and he was talking about how, you know, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson used to correspond with each other, and they were talking about the Republic and how the Roman Republic failed. And the reasons, you know, I mean, they were at the time thinking, you know, America's republic won't fail because we haven't, you know, the Roman Republic, they blamed the fall on their loss of their, the people had lost what was it? They had become, what was the word they used? I don't want to use the word, it's not morality, so to speak. It was like, well, they didn't believe in themselves anymore as far as a country. They didn't, I mean, like, well, what he was saying is that Americans would continue to love. I forgot what the exact thing he attributed that to. It was like a moral thing. It was because of our morality, because of our passion and commitment to the right thing. And it's about caring. Vote, like for example, voting. When we vote in our country, I've so many times I do not, because we live in a country where it's a republic and we have to vote, then I have a responsibility as though I were king, so to speak. Not to act like a king, but I have some responsibility for at least those decisions I make. I've got to, I shouldn't just ignore it. Well, I would definitely rather ignore it than make the wrong decision, that's for sure. But so, we have this voting system where we all participate, or many of us do, we don't all, where we all may participate if we're registered and adults and all that. Well, if I'm going to participate in that, I have a responsibility to do what's right, and I have a responsibility to sort of educate myself, to get to know the issues, because I have to make a decision about many of them. And so, and to the degree that we don't do that, that we vote in ignorance, or based on what the media says. Because I got a song I've been working, I got a bunch of songs. There's like 12, 13 songs. And since I've only released like 3 or 4, you can imagine. This is like 8 or 9 that you haven't heard yet. One's called The Press in America, it's called The Press in America, and the lyric is, the press in America are traitorous scum. They lie, they lie, they lie. And that's true. But if you listen to lies and you judge based on lies, you're a crummy judge. If you vote based on lies, you're a bad voter. And the point is, if we're being lied to, if we're getting bad information, we're not going to vote well. And we're in a pretty bad situation in our country because really we've allowed for years and years and years the education system to miseducate our children and fill their heads with garbage. And then they go to colleges and they're also filled with these very un-American ideas, and ideas that sort of hate our country. Hate the good things about our country. It's one thing to hate. I hate the evil in me, and I hate the evil in my country. I want it out. I want it gone, because I want my country to be good, because I'm partially responsible for what my country does, because I'm a voter. I can't do that much. I'm responsible to at least vote right. But the idea, when I brought Jefferson and Adams, we always look back to the beginning of the country, say, at the beginning it was so much better. Maybe. I don't think humans were better in the past, but maybe when we first put our first ruler, I don't like the word rulers, but our leaders, our politicians, our judges, maybe when it was new, people thought, we really got to do this right. And then a lot of times that is the truth. It's like when you start off an endeavor, you start off with you may go from no organization to a full organization in a short amount of time. But once you have a total organization of an endeavor, over time, there's going to be a tendency through entropy of that organization to go into disorder. And that's true of governments. It will grow in bureaucracy and also in chaos and disorder within the realm of that. And it will have more order. You gotta understand, like if you look at tax documents, like the tax code, I remember in the 80s when they simplified it, in the Reagan years. I was a child, but I was actually aware of taxes because my dad would do his and I would watch. And I do my own taxes, I have for years. And so I'd watch this, doing of the taxes. What was the point of that? Gosh, this is seriously bad sometimes. It's because I have an obscure point that's going to really hit home. And then in the middle of it, I'm like, okay, how was that connecting? All right, taxes. It's funny. I know people might the problem is I don't watch those comments during the video because well, it just doesn't work very well to read comments and stuff. If people were gonna like help me out, not that I'm asking for it really, because I don't even know if you know what I was trying to say. But anyways, it'll come up again. I just need to stop thinking about it. Zion should be described with righteousness. Well, because going back to the way it was. In the future, you want to recapture that zeal sometimes at the beginning. When you start off, things are organized. You want to get it done right. But as time goes on, things fall. Oh, tax code, the organization. They simplified the tax code at some point. But then over the years, they started unsimplifying it again. And so in some sense, it became there was greater organization because, in a sense, like, well, now if you have this special case, we have these special rules. And if you have this going on, we have this rule. And if you have that going on, we have that deduction. If you have this going on, you've got that tax. So there's all this, like, stuff happening. Depending on your situation, they keep adding rules. And at the same time, it adds organization to it, but also it creates a sense of confusion and chaos. I mean, when I did my partnership return the first time, my mind was blown just by the sheer amount of stuff I had to read through to find out, oh, this doesn't apply to you. That's why I guess tax attorneys are handy. Because instead of taking a month to do your taxes, especially the first time, I mean, if you're doing a partnership or a corporation, if you do your taxes in a day, you might have done something wrong. There's a lot to it, a lot more to it than that. All right. I don't think it took me a month. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but it took me a while to get through all the regulations. I think it was like a week where I was basically completely consumed with taxes. And the destruction of the transgressors and the sinners shall be together, and they that forsake the Lord shall be consumed. I wanted to say something about converts in the last verse, because converts, people who convert, I don't know if that's specifically what that means, though, honestly. And I don't know if I really want to look it up. If I want to make a big point about that. The zeal of a convert. Well, because that's the thing is, like, whether nationally or religiously, there's a certain thing that when someone's a new something, a new Christian, or a new American citizen, a lot of times you see the most zealous, patriotic people are immigrants who came legally. I mean, especially because they had to go through a lot to get here, and so therefore they have a lot of enthusiasm, and and rightly so. I'm pro that, but you listen to them, and you can see that zeal, and it's the same thing when someone becomes a new Christian. Often there's the zeal of a convert. I actually had the zeal of a convert, and I have the zeal of a convert, even though I'm not a convert. But because I had such a I went from, I don't know, it's like because I went from being more than nominal to being like, I want to say totally committed, but I want something stronger. I mean, stronger than totally committed. Like committed to to things I don't like to say. Like to things like, I don't want it, because Peter spoke foolishly, like, I'll lay my life down for you, Lord. It's like, I don't know. I'd like to think I could do that, but I'd never lay my life down for anybody, in my family. No, I have in a metaphorical sense, I guess, it's like, there are things I gave up, things I worked to give up, things that were not easy to give up. But because of family or commitments or just religion, you make those changes. The destruction, judgment and righteousness. That's what's going to redeem the city. God will bring judgment and righteousness to it. And that will restore it to its former glory. It's not saying necessarily to perfection, but to what was once a reasonably just society. And here's the last few verses, and we're going to cover them. Hopefully 5 minutes will be enough. I don't know. And the destruction of the transgressors and the sinners shall be together, and they that forsake the Lord shall be consumed. This is where I violate the terms of service, by the way. I think when you say sinners shall be destroyed, that's what's going to get you banned. I'm telling you. Because when I got canceled, honestly, they didn't really cite racism. It was because of they canceled my religious stuff, and they canceled everything because they said all my stuff has this aspect of calling for the destruction of people of a specific race or protected category. And I don't get that. I mean, I guess sinners are a protected category? Now? You can't condemn sinners anymore? I think so. Because it's like, especially if you still call things like sodomy and homosexuality and because like I said, sodomy it's kind of a weird term because technically it should refer to anal rape. All right, just to be quite blunt, and hope I should have cover your kids' ears, whatever. Honestly, don't cover your kids' ears. Teach them. Really. Don't let someone else teach them what that means, I mean, it's not, I can't say I actually explained to anyone what that was. Truthfully. I can't say I ever took it. Let me explain something to you, kid. Here's a phrase I don't want you to forget. Seems like wrong. Okay, so the destruction of the transgressors of the sinners shall be together. They that forsake the Lord shall be consumed. God is not playing around. The transgressors, those, and he said the transgressions. Is he touchy about myself? I need more sacrifice? I need more worship? No. I got plenty of worship. I'm sick of it. I want justice. I want judgment. I want righteousness. That's what I want to see. God's not saying I need more sacrifice. Where are my sacrifices? For they shall be ashamed of the oaks which ye have desired. Now, remember I said they worshipped in the last study. I talked about the idolatry of the Israelites. And it says in the prophets and the kings, it says, and all Israel, they worshipped the host of heaven and Ashtaroth and Baal on every high hill and under every green tree. There's another place where it talks about, I think maybe in Isaiah, where it says they find a stick, a nice one, find a nice piece of wood, and they carve it, and they make a god. And so the oaks are put for the wood from which the gods are formed. So it's a figure of speech, meaning when it talks about oaks, it's like me saying, like, you will be ashamed of the steel you desired. And I'm referring to a car. You know what I mean? That meaning the steel is put for that which is made out of it. Same thing here. The oak is put for that which is made out of it, the idols. Or also the places of worship. Because, like I said, they would find groves of trees. Well, there's a weird thing, because sometimes it's translated grove, but it's Asherah. And because there is a tree involved, it's usually with... The thing is, a lot of the pagan worship was sexually oriented, like phallic. So they'd make erect penises as idols to bow down and worship, to offer drink offerings to, that kind of stuff. That's what a lot of times this refers to. It makes me think of like that. I see ads on the YouTube occasionally, redwood, oak. They literally put bark, and other stuff into pills to help men increase their blood flow to the necessary regions. I don't know. The obsession with male private parts sometimes is just too much for me. I mean, Women also obsess about their body parts, I guess, but it just seems a bit much. I've never been particularly motivated to care about this stuff. Okay. They'll be confounded for the gardens they have chosen. Because, like I said, the garden... Oh, what a beautiful garden. Let's put it in the midst of the garden, an idol to Ashtaroth. A big old phallic symbol. And we'll dance around it and worship it and offer it drink offerings. And isn't this wonderfully religious? And, of course, we'll still bring Yahweh his sacrifice because we wouldn't want to disrespect him. You know... It's like coming home with your groceries to your wife, you know, because you don't want to forget the groceries, but you still saw your mistress. But isn't she happy to have the groceries? Wouldn't want to leave her out, you know. Again, it's not particularly loyal or faithful. For ye shall be as an oak whose leaf faded. You know, you're going to be like your idols. You're going to be like a tree whose leaf fades, as a garden that has no water. I mean, like a dried out old tree, like a dried out old garden. When a garden gets dried out, you know, I'll tell you, you know, you get the plants growing up, you know, depending on what you're growing, it creates a lot of dry bush. It can go up in flames real easy. And the strong shall be his toe, and the maker of it is a spark. And they shall both burn together, and none shall quench them. I always like that verse. Toe refers to when straw or hay, the very finest bits of straw and hay. If you take hay and you were to put it through a screen and get all the little bits, not necessarily the dust, but like the little pieces, very small broken off pieces of vegetation that's all dried out, that was called tow, and it's very flammable. When it's saying the strong shall be his tow, meaning they will be extremely inflammable. And they're going to be extremely likely to catch fire. And what this means on a practical level, it's not that they're physically changed. It's just that God is so ready to torch them. That's what he's saying. I am so ready to torch these people. I am so ready to burn them. But in the way he said, the strong are like tow. They're like kindling wood. And the maker of it, the maker of the idol, the maker of the oaken idol, is a spark. And the strong should be, you know, because there are those, what's strong? What, considering what? Well, you know, we talked about leaders and rulers, the people in power that lead the people astray. You know what I mean? They're the ones leading, the ones saying, oh, it's okay. Ashtaroth, it's okay. Worship Ashtaroth, Baal, Molech, Chemosh, whatever god you happen to fancy, worship. They're the ones allowing this. They're the ones promoting it. They're also participating in it. They're the strong, the leaders. In our country, we got leaders. We got strong people who are powerful. The powerful. Think about it as the powerful. People of meat. Powerful financially. Powerful politically. Powerful, well-connected. Think about all the powerful in our world. Those who control the strings. Those who have the power to cancel you. They are like really fine. You ever burn any grass when you get like really fine dried grass? How that just burns. That's what they're like. The powerful in the world, God's looking at just kindling wood. That looks like a good place to start a fire. Right there. Metaphorically speaking, you know, so what it's saying is like, they are, you know, notice the strong, and tow is not anything strong. It's the opposite of strength. Obviously, it barely can hang on to existence. It either blows away or it goes up, whoosh. That's what tow is. Especially if you get mixed with the air, you can, you know, just like, I mean, it's not much different than the things that cause grain bins to explode when it gets airborne. I mean, if you put tow into the air, if you got it stirred up, I mean, you could potentially, explosion, potentially, sure. I think that refers to a similar thing. I could be wrong. Hay, maybe not so. I don't know. My barn had a lot of hay dust in it. and I never thought it was in danger of exploding. So I'm not a farmer. I just live in a rural area. And I've never farmed. I've gardened, There's a big difference, though. I wouldn't insult farmers with comparing what I do with what they do. So, everyone involved in this idolatry, the leadership, the makers, they're going to set each other on fire. And they're going to burn together, and none will quench. None will quench. And this goes, this reminds me of the passage we're going to talk about, Tophet, Hinnom, the place of burning, Gehenna in the New Testament, hell, as some call it. Hell is the place of unquenchable fire because it burns everything completely. Quenched fire. If you want to torture someone, you got to quench the fire. Meaning, I just poke you with the poker. I don't throw you in the fire. If I throw you in the fire, well, the fun will end real fast. But if I take the poker and slowly torment you, that's torture. I gotta quench the fire. Let you feel the pain. I gotta give you a break from the torment so you can feel the pain. I know, this sounds horrible, and that's how it works. I don't believe in eternal torment. I do believe there is torment. Sin has torment. Judgment has torment. All things that humans engage in can potentially hurt. You mean having good taken away, having things taken. But we're talking about the end. When we're talking about the end of things, we're talking about destruction. Tow doesn't. The idea of the maker being tow and a spark. Notice they're both likened to very small things. The powerful are like grass that's ready to whoosh into flames. And the people who make idols and the people who lead the people astray with idolatry, and they're just sparks. All they do is set you on fire. They have no other, and then they're gone. Useless. Other than, like I said, to start fire. And they will burn together, and none will quench, which indicates they will burn up, and they will be gone forever. They will go. God, they're going to be consumed. They that forsake the Lord will be consumed. God is a consuming fire. So anyways, that concludes chapter 1. We'll begin with chapter 2 tomorrow. It continues in the same thought. Thoughts are very much interconnected in the prophets, in this prophet especially. So thanks for joining us today. Look forward to being back again tomorrow to continue our study in Isaiah. Until then,
shall be consumed, for they shall be ashamed of the oaks which ye have desired, and ye shall be confounded for the gardens that ye have chosen. For ye shall be as an oak whose leaf fades, and as a garden that hath no water, and the strong shall be his toe, and the maker of it as a spark. And they shall both burn together, and none shall quench them.